Hello and welcome. I'm Brandon Torres.
And I'm Michelle Morales, and this is the Pacific Coast News for the County of San Mateo.
It's Wednesday, April 23rd, 2014, and this is the news for the week.
Our top story for this week is during the April 14th Pacifica City Council meeting, Matt Chang, his parents, and several supporters attended and addressed the City Council in regards to his brother, Errol Chang's death. Errol Chang was killed by the Daly City SWAT team on March 18th after a standoff that shut down Pedro Point for over 9 hours and required the surrounding residents of 384 San Pedro Avenue to be evacuated. When one addresses the City Council, you're given a time limit of 3 minutes. Matt Chang ran out of time, but Mayor Ann Nehart allowed an exception in the rule because of the circumstances and at the urging of the attendants, which you'll momentarily hear so that Matt Chang could finish speaking. Here is what Matt Chang had to say about the ordeal.
My name is Matt Chang. I'm the brother of Errol Chang, who was murdered by the Daly City SWAT team and Pacifica Police Department. Errol was officially diagnosed with schizophrenia. Over the past 2 weeks, before he was murdered, he had been displaying increasingly erratic behavior. We had been closely monitoring his behavior, and we knew that he needed to seek help. On March 18th, the day he was murdered, my mother, my father, and I attempted to convince Errol to let us take him to a psychiatric emergency facility. Because of his erratic frame of mind, we were unfortunately unable to do so, and we felt we had no choice but to call 911. We detailed his condition at length, explained that he was carrying a hatchet in his pocket to protect himself because he thought people were after him. He hadn't slept in 3 days and had hardly eaten. When the police arrived, Errol was in the backyard, and there were approximately 6 officers on site. One of the officers tased Errol, and he started to run towards the house, passing an officer, and I tackled him. The officers were pointing their guns and yelling at me to get off of him and pulled me off. In my opinion, the officers were not prepared to restrain him after he had been tased. As a result, Errol got into the house. At that point, the police informed us that they considered Errol a criminal for brandishing a weapon at officers and not an innocent person with mental illness. After only 6 hours, the SWAT team drove a tank in front of my brother's home. He then began to communicate with them through a window. They tried to convince Errol to come out of the house over a loudspeaker, which failed. They shattered the front window and threw a black box containing a phone, but he did not answer. They then smashed the remaining windows and launched a series of flash bombs into the house. On several occasions, as you'll see in the pictures, Errol was leaning out of the front windows with his arms outstretched, the universal gesture for surrender. They then seized the home, a decision which not only resulted in my brother's murder, but also a member of the SWAT team was allegedly cut on the forearm. It's obvious that these procedures and tactics do not work.
Matt, can you
I have a bit more.
Go ahead.
Let it go.
I'm gonna, just for this circumstance, and because you're his brother, and you have my deepest condolences.
Okay. I'll try to.
Well, if you can do it in a minute, please.
It's obvious that these procedures and tactics do not work. He was in an extremely paranoid state. He thought people were trying to kill him. And every tactic the police used made him more agitated, and his paranoid fantasies a reality. My family, myself, and many members of the community want to know what will be done to change these procedures and tactics used by the police when dealing with a person with mental illness. Also, will Internal Affairs or the FBI be called in to investigate the police actions and excessive force used against Errol? We are obviously devastated by the loss of our Errol and the incompetence and mismanagement of the situation by the Pacifica and Daly City Police. Also, the police left 6 flash bombs in the house where my father was living. 2 days after my brother was murdered, I received a phone call from Sergeant Glasgow that they had forgot to remove the flash bombs from my father's house and admitted to me that they were potentially dangerous because they didn't know if they had all been detonated. These bombs could have gone off and caused a fire or even worse. This level of incompetence is just unbelievable and unacceptable. Who is going to be held responsible for this? How is that protecting and serving the citizens? Thank you.
Again, that was Matt Chang addressing the Pacifica City Council during the April 14th meeting. And that was also the voice of Mayor Ann Neihardt, who again allowed Matt Chang to address the City Council for longer than the allotted 3 minutes. He also said that the Daly City SWAT team left flash bombs at the house on San Pedro Avenue and admitted to him that they weren't sure if they had all been detonated. All the Chang family supporters wore green ribbons in honor of Errol Chang. 5 supporters also spoke about the incident. Here are highlights of some of those supporters.
It feels to me is that on March 18th, 2014, Errol Chang was murdered for being an inconvenience. Again, this is the way it feels to me. It feels to me this way. I feel very strongly there should be a full investigation as to the competence of the commanding officer and what they train SWAT to do when dealing with a person who needs mental help. Apparently, cops are killing mentally ill all over the country rather than learning how to help them properly. And I feel like this is a great opportunity to teach other communities how to stop that if we make a concerted effort to it right now. We as taxpayers are paying them to help us, and so when instead of helping us, they do quite the opposite and take from us the ones we love. It puts a great deal of doubt in our minds about people who are genuinely trying to help us, at least when they get into this to begin with. Thank you.
And I feel that there is a huge disparity between what is good for the police department and what is good for citizens. And it needs to be addressed. Mental health is a scary issue. Nobody knows what to do about it. Our mental health system is sorely, sorely lacking to the point where it makes me cry. I've seen so many families with family members that have severe mental health issues, and they're basically told, no matter how many times they plead to the healthcare system or to the police department, you can't do anything until something horrible happens. And when something horrible happens, there's nowhere for the police, even if what happened in this situation, there's no sensitivity training for the police officers. I understand they do what they're trained to do, and what they're trained to do is so sorely lacking. And even if in a perfect scenario, if he was able to be brought to somewhere peacefully, there's nowhere to bring him. There's nowhere to bring him. You have to have something so horrible happen in order to get any attention in the mental health care system. My question is to the council, who do we talk to make something happen for the mental health care system? It's a disservice to the police officers, it's a disservice to the families in our community. Just give me the path and I will take it. This should not have happened. This should not have happened at all. Nobody wins. How does someone win? What can we do to make everybody win, or to at least make everyone not suffer? What do we need to do?
Ian Butler, it was really heartening for me to see at the beginning of this meeting, Mary Beer and the kids giving their presentation on drugs and alcohol with kids. We all know that her crusade began 9 years ago when her daughter was killed in a horrible drug driving accident. And when that kind of thing happens to a person, to a family, they try to find a way to channel that grief that they have. And Mary's gone on this amazing mission to make sure that we're a safe community where stuff like that never happens in our community again. And I've watched her voice grow stronger over the years and watched her make more and more networks, and it's been really powerful. With this, with the Errol Chang, his brutal killing, less than a month ago now, I feel that a similar kind of tragedy has happened in our community. And, you know, schizophrenic with an axe sounds like a scary person, but the rest of the time, they described him as he was a teddy bear. He had really close friends in his community, and he was a really sweet, wonderful, loving man. You know, I'm sure at that moment, he didn't seem like that kind of a man, but he wasn't himself at that time. But, you know, I think that, I suspect that this family, for many years, we're going to be working to make sure that this community is a place that it's safe to be somebody with mental health issues, that we work to get the support they need to prevent situations like this from even starting, to give tools to families to deal with this kind of thing, but also to change the way that we deal with these things, so we don't treat a person who's going through a difficult situation like this like a criminal.
Again, those were Pacifican residents who addressed the Pacifica City Council during the April 14th meeting in regards to the shooting of Errol Chang. Captain Joe Spanheimer of the Pacifica Police Department was also at the meeting and said he couldn't make any comments since the investigation hasn't been completed yet. During that incident, friends of Chang told Pacific Coast News that Chang was schizophrenic and hadn't taken his medication for the past few days. As a result, they said Chang was seeing and hearing things that weren't there. As the last speaker, Ian Butler, noted, Mary Beer was also there at the meeting with the North County Prevention Partnership of Daly City and the Pacifica Coalition, who gave a presentation on youth alcohol and drug abuse and ways to prevent it. Mary Beer lost her nephew, Johnny Beer, in a tragic accident on Lakeside Avenue in Pacifica. His girlfriend, Stephanie Echeverry, was also killed. They were riding in the truck of Johnny Beer's friend, Mark Michelson, who lost control of the truck and slammed into a tree. Michelson had a blood alcohol level almost twice the legal limit.
Earlier that day, on April 14th, State Senator Jerry Hill held his community event, Java with Jerry, at Mazzetti's in Pacifica.
We need the teleprompter.
Needless to say, it was standing room only event for most residents and city council members Sue Diggory and Karen Irving. Senator Hill talked about a variety of topics such as State Senator Leland Yee, laws that he's working on, the state budget, and PG&E. The mother of Errol Chang was also at the meeting and asked Senator Hill what kind of changes will be made in the police department when it comes to dealing with mentally ill people. Also during the event, Senator Hill presented Pacificans Care with the Community Hero Award for helping the community to Julie Mazzetti for being in business for over 40 years. Afterward, State Senator Hill had a candid talk with Pacific Coast News about the charges State Senator Yee is facing. Here's what he had to say about representation and how he's affected by it.
District, those constituents that he had were represented by him as well as by me and Senator Leonard. So now that he's been suspended, those constituents of his are still represented by me and Senator Leonard. So they all have a representation and a representative in Sacramento. So they had two before, now they have one, which is what the most of the people in California have anyway. So, and I think constituents, you know, it's one thing when you hear about an elected official in Los Angeles or San Diego, you never see them, you don't know them, they're a name and a picture. But with someone like Leland Yee, who's been here, he's been in the parade, in the Fog Fest parade, he's been part of this community, and you see that, it shocks you and it hurts. And I think that's what we're all feeling today. Well, it certainly affects me because, and all the legislators, and especially people in Pacifica and the coast, because Leland has been around a long time, he's represented us a long time, and you think you know someone, and there's a certain feeling of betrayal, a certain feeling of hurt. It becomes personal when you know someone as well as we thought we knew Leland Yee. And that's really the hard part. In Sacramento, in the Senate, We are very pained by it and have been suffering a lot because certainly we're all reflected, you know, it all reflects on all of us when this happens. And when a couple of individuals kind of go the wrong way, it doesn't mean that everyone else, there are 120 legislators and they have 3 that have done that. That means that there are 117 good ones. And that's how we look at it. It's hard to do that. We have a lot of work to do to build that confidence in the public again so they feel trust in government. And that's really what we want to do. People should trust their government. And I think right now they're disappointed and they're hurt too.
While over in Half Moon Bay, several beekeepers and their supporters showed up at the April 15th City Council meeting where the council was expected to adopt an ordinance that is known as the 2014 Cleanup Amendments. The changes proposed by this ordinance are to eliminate outdated or obsolete code provisions, conform to changes in state law, and to eliminate redundant or unnecessary functions or code requirements. One of the items this code is related to is beekeeping. Since the beekeeping community came to address the City Council, the Council unanimously voted to take the item off the agenda so they could accept public comments. Although there were several supporters, only 2 addressed the Council. Here's what one of them had to say.
What concerns me most is that what we found in most cities is that there isn't a lot of complaints about honeybees. There always can be problems. I mean, they are honeybees, they do swarm, there's always differences between people. But most of the time, those problems can be solved with just talking about it and with educated beekeepers. And I think that's the most important thing, is beekeepers have to be educated. You know, they need water. You don't want them at your neighbor's swimming pool. But we need to make sure, as an organization, that we help those people make sure that we don't cause problems for neighbors. I mean, none of us deserve to have a problem. So that's part of what I think the San Mateo Bee Guild is all about, is education. And that's an important part of anything in this world, is education.
Also during the meeting, the city attorney gave a report on last week's Coastal Commission meeting. As anticipated, the Coastal Commission approves most of Half Moon Bay's projects and ordinances, but with some modifications. Here is part of the city attorney's report on that meeting.
And then a significant step forward was, after 5 years, the Coastal Commission approved the coastal development permit for our citywide drainage maintenance plan over the appeal of a local resident. That was an appeal filed back in January, and the hearing that was at the Coastal Commission last week was for the determination of whether or not the appeal, which was 24 pages of very technical claims and allegations, the issue was whether or not the appeal raised a substantial issue of compliance with either the city LCP or the Coastal Act, and the Coastal Commission staff recommended, and the Coastal Commission agreed, that the appeal raised no substantial issue, which is tantamount to finding that the appeal was essentially frivolous. So that was a very positive step forward.
The city manager updated the county supervisors on the planning of the Half Moon Bay's library during their April 22nd county supervisors meeting. John Maltby, county manager, told the supervisors that the community input process for the planning of a new library in Half Moon Bay has begun. Group 4, the architectural firm leading the planning, will gather input from citizens and a variety of community groups over the next 3 months. This initial phase of the new library project is funded by the Half Moon Bay Library Measure A. The county will pay for half of the new library because it serves so many residents of the unincorporated coastside area. Half Moon Bay and the county are working to create a library that is customer-centered, flexible, and responsive to current trends. Some of the features the new library will have are special spaces for children, teens, and quiet reading and study rooms, a community program room, study areas, CDs, DVDs, and public computers. Half Moon Bay plans to hold 3 more meetings over the month of May. They will be on May 3rd and an open house and meeting on May 8th. For more details about these events, visit the city's website listed below.
And now our coastal crime segment. A car was reported stolen from Palmetto Avenue in Pacifica a little after 5 p.m. on April 20th. The resident reported that it was taken sometime earlier that day. A 1978 Chevy pickup truck was reported stolen on April 15th at around noon on Ramona Avenue. The resident had just returned home after being out of town for 3 weeks. On April 17th, a 14-year-old juvenile was arrested on the 300 block of Purisma in Half Moon Bay at 8:35 a.m. He's charged with false imprisonment, assault, and battery after he allegedly assaulted his grandmother and prevented her from calling 911. The juvenile was transported to Youth Service Center. Also on April 17th, sheriff deputies responded to a call of a suspicious device in the middle of the road on the 500 block of Kelly Avenue. The device was made of PVC pipe with a metal hose clamp and had a string coming out of it, resembling a pipe bomb. Nearby schools and businesses were notified to shelter in place. The sheriff's bomb squad arrived on scene and determined the item to be a homemade device that held paintbrushes and paint thinner, which apparently fell from the back of a passing work truck. And that's all we have time for this week. And now for the Coastal Court update. Mark Furlan will be in court on May 7th. This is when the judge will deliver his final opinion in regards to his competency, even though 3 evaluations have been submitted to the courts. The last doctor's evaluation was submitted on January 23rd. The first 2 conflicting reports were submitted on October 24th and December 12th. Furlan's trial was scheduled to begin April 1st, but on April 3rd opted for the trial without a jury. Furlan is on trial for allegedly killing Keith Coffey on October 17, 2012. Coffey reportedly had over 90 wounds and was bludgeoned to death. At that time, it was Pacifica's first homicide since 2000. Christina Mazzei of San Carlos is defending Furlan, and Deputy District Attorney Sean Gallagher is the prosecutor.
In county health news, the Pacifica Community Emergency Response Team assisted the San Mateo County Health System in simulating the delivery of large quantities of medicine and medical supplies to homes of Pacifica residents on April 17th. The Moose Lodge in Pacifica was temporarily turned into headquarters for the event. Volunteers and agencies throughout the county participated in the drill to assess their readiness to provide timely emergency assistance in the event of a major health emergency such as pandemic influenza, a food or waterborne illness, or the intentional release of a bioagent. The exercise, known as Silver Dragon, tested the health system's ability to partner with local cities, law enforcement, fire departments, the American Red Cross, and community emergency response teams for mass dispensing of medicine from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control. The purpose of the exercise was to test door-to-door distribution as realistically as possible. The volunteers of Pacifica's CERT team were divided into 4 teams in the neighborhoods of Sharp Park, Valley Mar, and some areas of Pacific Manor. The teams distributed educational information in reusable, eco-friendly shopping bags, simulating medicine that could be delivered following a health-related emergency. As part of the exercise, the San Mateo Medical Center food service staff set up its mobile kitchen to test its capabilities to feed and hydrate volunteers and first responders during a major emergency. Providing the appropriate food and beverages for these individuals can be a critical part of the response effort. This is the 8th time the Silver Dragon exercise has been conducted.
Now switching over to our beach, water, and creek report. As in our last broadcast, there are just 2 beaches that have elevated levels of indicator bacteria, and signs have been posted to warn users that they may become ill if they engage in water contact activities in the posted area. They are Capistrano and Outer Harbor beaches. San Mateo County routinely tests 43 natural recreational water sites each week by a combination of county staff and volunteers, primarily associated with the local chapter of the Surfrider Foundation. Samples are analyzed by the San Mateo County Public Health Laboratory for 3 bacteria indicator parameters specified by state regulations. These indicator bacteria include coliform, E. coli, and Enterococcus. When high indicator bacteria levels are found, the site is posted with a warning sign and is retested to confirm the results. Warning signs are posted when bacteria standards have exceeded state swimming standards, but there is no confirmed source of contamination. Persons using recreational water posted by county health officials do so at their own risk. These signs are posted to alert the public that there may be a risk of illness associated with swimming in contaminated areas and are an advisory rather than a quarantine or beach closure. This week, there is only one creek with warning signs, and it's at San Pedro Creek at Lindamar Beach. When swimming at ocean beaches with creeks that cross the beach, it is best to practice to avoid recreational activity in the creek, as well as in the ocean water in the immediate area where the creek meets the ocean. While the creek water may look calmer and safer for you or your children to play in, it typically has higher bacteria counts than the ocean water.
It was a cold and foggy Easter Sunday morning when more than 700 amateur and professional athletes took the plunge in the Pacific Ocean at the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club to compete in the 2014 Silicon Valley International Triathlon. The event is typically held in Morgan Hill, but because the reservoir where it's normally held is only at 2% capacity, the event had to be moved. It was just decided in February to move the event to Half Moon Bay. The event started with a 0.93-mile swim around Pillar Point Harbor. Although wetsuits were recommended, there was one lone swimmer who braved the frigid waters in just a bathing suit. The next leg of the race was a 24.9-mile bike ride where the course was Pillar Point Harbor to the Johnson House on Higgins Canyon Road. The final part of the triathlon was a 6.2-mile coastal run. This year's race also featured a newly added Silicon Valley Super Sprint Triathlon, which utilized a smaller portion of the longer International Triathlon course. The Super Sprint featured a 35-mile swim, a 9.5-mile scenic bike ride along the coast, and a flat and fast 3.1-mile run. The top 3 winners of the men in the triathlon were Scott Franderson of Orinda, Rich Viola of Tiburon, and Eric Clarkson of Santa Cruz. All of their times were separated by 1/100th of a second. While the top 3 women were Robin Pomeroy of Folsom, Jessica Smith of Stanford, and Claire Mancini of Hillsborough. Their times were separated by a few seconds. The Silicon Valley International Triathlon and Silicon Super Sprint Triathlon are produced by USA Productions.
Well, I think we need to cut it, right? Are we wrapping it up?
Lastly, don't forget the Pacifica Coast Dream Machine Show happens for just a one-day mega show on April 27th from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. at the Half Moon Bay Airport. The 24th annual event is a massive celebration of mechanical ingenuity, power, and style known as the coolest show on earth. The show benefits the Coastside Adult Day Health Center in Half Moon Bay. This year's headline attractions include an impressive array of military aircraft